he's bringing hate towards the Muslim community. He pulls things out of context over and over again. Like, for example, he had this post about halal meat.
Imam Tawhidi, he's working for reform. What do you think about this? Do you? By the way, I have him booked in a couple of weeks, so don't make me look. Anyway, speak for yourself. I love him, by the way.
I think Islamic reform is a good thing. I don't understand Imam Tawhidi because I feel, and maybe I should have a conversation with him too, but I feel like a lot of the things he says are like pro-Shia propaganda. That's what it feels like. Like, that's what it sounds like to me. Like, I'll give you just one example. He says Aisha, the favorite wife of Muhammad, was she was sleeping with every man in town until Muhammad married her. And so in order to show that she's kind of like the Virgin Mary, she's pure, they said she's a kid. So obviously if she's a kid, she couldn't have slept with all these men. I have no idea like where he got this from. Like, I have never heard this before.
What's more important in Islam is that Muhammad marries a virgin.
So she weren't a virgin. You're saying she had been about. Aisha had been about. So you're all lying because you want everyone to think he married a pure girl, whereas really he married a... Oh my God, that's a different side to the argument. Sorry for laughing.
I want you to laugh. I can't say any more, but you got it.
They detest Aisha. They detest Abu Bakr. They detest Omar because they consider that Ali should have been the caliph, the only caliph, not these other people. They consider that these people, they unrightfully usurped the power from the rightful Imam Ali. And so I don't really understand some of the things that Tawhidi is saying. To me, it seems like it's very pro-Shia. But in general, if you want to talk about Islamic reform, I think there's definitely... I don't think progressive Muslims are ever going to become mainstream. Like, there's Muslims that say women can lead the prayer, Muslim women can marry non-Muslim men. These are almost like extremists, and the Quranists are almost like extremists in the community. They're seen as extremists,
yeah,
and they're not seen as representative of the Muslim community. But yeah, I do think the real reform is going to come from people who don't call themselves reformers. They just call themselves Muslims, and like, for example, Hamza Yusuf. And they are the ones who are going to bring Islam to be more incompatible with the rest of the world.
But if you will accept Hamza Yusuf without using words propaganda, is there a bias maybe within you that you will not accept?
Well, this is what I'm... Okay, so this is the problem. The problem is when Imam Tawhidi is claiming to be an Islamic reformer, but when he's refusing to speak against the Shia practices, but he's speaking against Sunni Muslims, and he's willing to, like, for example, say things like, I want to put a camera in the Sunni mosques because they're terrorists there. But like, I've never heard him speak against Shiism. In the live stream he did with Amin Nawabi on the secular jihadists and Faisal Said al-Muttar, Faisal, who is also an ex-Shia, asked him, what about that thing where they hit the heads, right? Yeah. And he's like, I don't want to talk about that. He's like, I don't want to talk about that. That's very sacred to some Muslims, Shia Muslims. It's very important to them. The mourning of Hussein.
My question is, so Tatbir, I mean, as you probably know, is that people hitting themselves with the sword and all of that. And we have like almost like every year, well, maybe every year, maybe every month in Iraq, in which at least like 20 people or 30 people die from infection, from hitting the sword on the head, or sometimes they do it to their children. And I'm wondering, how do you reconcile the Tatbir concept with morality, or do you find it ethical? I mean, what's your opinion about the whole Tatbir idea?
Well, it is something that I used to practice, and I don't. And I would ask your kind let's say, permission to allow me to not go too deep into that, as it could really offend many people. This is something, when it comes to Imam Hussein and Karbala. I don't wish to touch that. That's a red line for many people. So in order that I don't end up offending many people, I'll speak about myself. I will not practice that. However, just to correct your statistics, there's no such thing as 20 to 30 people dying every now and then. That doesn't happen at all. Probably every 3-4 years we might have 2-3 people dying, and that's because of the stampedes, not the actual ritual. And look, every religion has its own rituals. The Catholics do it. The Pope John Paul used to do it, and there are many other people many other denominations, minorities that go on flagellating, and these things don't really kill. They just they do that with the aim to feel the pain of the saint that they love. I don't engage in such practices at all, but I also do not mock or attack anyone for that. The statistics are not what I know of.
Like, if you're an Islamic reformer, you better talk about that. That's a horrible practice, that the hitting little kids sometimes, right? Now, I'm sure he would agree with that you shouldn't hit little kids, but even adults, like, what like, this is like self, of course, as like I said, going back to what I originally said, Muslims have the right to do that to themselves as long as they don't kill themselves, just like Catholics whip themselves and whatever. But it's a disgusting practice, and if you're a reformer, you should talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the mess in your own backyard, as well as not just the mess. Hamza Yusuf doesn't claim to be a reformer. He sees Islam as this is part of Islam, so this is how he interprets it. But if someone's claiming to be a reformer, you got to talk about the shit in your backyard too, right? That's why I have a problem with Tawhidi, and I'd be happy to talk to him about this if he wants to talk to me about this. I mean, that's my perspective about Tawhidi.
Do you see anything positive with what he's doing? Anything of value for? Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like him.
Okay,
what I've seen with Tawhidi is he's bringing hate towards the Muslim community. He pulls things out of context over and over again. Like, for example, he had this post about halal meat, and he had a picture of some guy's backyard that was cutting meat, and he said, look, this big supermarket chain, they're getting halal meat from this guy's backyard. Look how disgusting that is. Is that what we want? We want halal meat? Like, he's fear-mongering against halal meat. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen him post. Like, that was some random picture of some guy cutting meat. It was probably after Eid. So whenever, twice a year you have Eid, and one of the Eids, they have what's called Bakra Eid, where they slaughter animals and they share with their neighbors and they give to charity. The guy was probably bought an animal and he was sharing the meat with his neighbors. But the guy was trying to say, Imam Tawhidi was trying to say, this is where halal meat comes from, some guy's backyard. You're telling me a major supermarket chain is getting halal meat from a guy's backyard? How the hell does he do that much? And of course, he was forced to admit after he was called out that this is wrong. Like, Muhammad Syed found the picture on Google Earth or Google Images or something, and they found out it had nothing to do with that. It wasn't even in the same country or something. It was such a ridiculous thing. And then, like, he does this over and over again. He tries to fear-monger against Muslims and say things out of context of the truth. I eventually want to have a conversation with him. I want to call him out on these things. He posted about a Palestinian man that was arrested in UK for having sex with a dead person. Okay, this is very disgusting, necrophilia. And he said, look, he's showing his Palestinian values. Like, excuse me, that's a Palestinian value? Having sex with dead people? Like, whoa, like, what the hell are you saying? And one of my friends, Vidu Wids, Walid, he asked him about this in a live chat with him, and he said, why, like, did you say this is Palestinian values? And the guy said, I was just kidding. I was just a joke. I was just sarcasm. Like, how can you say things like that and then, like, laugh it off as sarcasm when it wasn't, like, there was no indication in the post whatsoever that it was sarcasm or it was a joke. But that's what he does. He said, oh, I was just kidding. I was just a joke. Yeah. So I honestly think he's unbalanced in his criticism of Islam, and he's doing a lot of fear mongering, and I don't like it. That's where, and I haven't seen that from you. Like I think he's very balanced in what you're saying to me, which I'm really happy about. But I don't see that from him. And if you like, when you have him on the show, you can ask him about some of these examples. I'll give you some more examples to ask him about as well. Like there was this example of this cross, and on this Greek island, and again he made a big post saying that the natives were they didn't want to offend Muslims, so they pulled it down. But the reality was, some people just put up that cross. It wasn't even like an official church or anything, and it was taken down for whatever reason. But it wasn't because they were like placating the Muslims or the Muslims complained or something. No, it was some ridiculous. Like it's again like that's what I find with him over and over again. He misrepresents the situation to try to make Muslims look bad. That's what I think.
I see your point.